points.
8 days to go, a fly past, and they are not Italian aircraft because I think they're from Switzerland, because that's where we're going today now as they blow out the Italian flag colours, because this race making an incursion now into Switzerland, and they do it by climbing over the San Bernardo Pass. But this race now down to just under 170 riders left in.
Two big mountain passes on the route this afternoon. The riders moving away from Aosta this morning, heading up to the summit of the San Bernard, descending into Switzerland, going through the town of Sion, but then it's all the very nasty climb at the end, the Passo Sempione, before descending down back into Italy for the finish in Domodossola.
And not surprisingly, it's been a day of getting the group away that doesn't really matter. Fortunato Baglioni, who's having his best Tour of Italy I can remember. He's a very good climber.
Check out his heart rate though. Look at that. He's working now at 97%, tickling the maximum heart rate that he can possibly come in with. This man, I remember a couple of years ago, was the winner of the King of the Mountains classification in the Tour de Langkawi in Malaysia, and he's a man who over the years has been very aggressive in the Giro d'Italia. Sits up, looks over his shoulder, waiting to see if the other guys who were in the breakaway with him are going to rejoin him.
They're just behind him. In fact, Sandy Cassar is in the breakaway, Paolo Tirolongo, Zampieri, Steph Schumacher. There's the full list for you. Sandy Cassar, in fact, was the erstwhile leader in the King of the Mountains competition. But in all honesty, up until today, and it might be changing now because of those points by Baglioni, but Basso himself has been the leader of the King of the Mountains since he got the race lead, and he's got a double header going there. This is the breakaway now, and frankly, so far ahead, the winner's going to come from this group.
Well, the last time check we got was 9.5 minutes back to the main field, and as you say, Phil, none of these riders in this leading group are at all dangerous in the overall classification, and I have a feeling that maybe the guys will have a little bit of a day off. A man to watch out for towards the end there is Ivan Parra, rides for Cofidis. He's a man that could ride away when we come to the Passo Sempione.
Well, we're going to see what's going to happen now, because this little group has got everything to race for. Panaria got a couple of men in this breakaway, and Baglioni's had a good day out. I think he's done enough to capture the King of the Mountains competition. It's a green jersey, by the way, and we don't see it too often so far in this tour. Caught a glimpse of it about a week ago, I think. And this breakaway, nobody affecting Basso, who's having something of a day off here as he prepares for the final week of battle.
In fact, that's the man I was just mentioning before. This is Ivan Parra, was a revelation last year in the Giro d'Italia, and he's decided this is a good move. Sandy Cassar, the French hope for the future, has decided he too is trying to get himself a little bit of glory on a stage like this.
There's another look at the attack, and that's the way to attack. 3 or 4 men down, swing to the right of the road, not worry about anybody, give it your best shot. But Cassar was paying attention there, and he's gone straight after him.
Well, Parra won 2 stages in the mountains in the Giro last year when he was riding for Giro d'Italia, and that's why they picked him up. The team Cofidis, 8.5 minutes the advantage between the Gruppo di Testa and the Gruppo di Maglia Rosa, who on the right-hand side really don't seem to be panicking too much. Looks like Bobby Julich going through there. There's the pink jersey a little bit further back of Ivan Basso, with, I have to say, a very sensible lead in this race. I'm not really sure, Phil, can anybody challenge him? It's really becoming a race for him to lose.
Now, this has very definitely been a day of transition for Ivan Basso. There is nobody in that front group. There are 11 riders up front affecting the situation at all. So the 9 minutes won't mean a thing, but the winner will, of course, not agree with those comments. Because everybody wants to win a stage. And now we've been through Switzerland, we're back in Italy, and we're heading up towards the finish. Sandy Cassar in the hot seat at the front as he looks around to see who's going to make the next move.
Well, the next move will surely not come until we start the ascent of the Passo Sempione, a very difficult climb which will take the riders away from Switzerland and drop down into the finish line in Italy.
So we're looking at the riders here all together. Thinking now, who's going to start the sprint at Might? 6 kilometres to go to the finish. And, well, numerically, of course, 1 or 2 riders do have a couple of teammates here. Ico Flores, he's not going to do much in the sprint, I don't think. He'd have liked a hilltop finish. Phonak have got Steve Zampieri. Johan Schopp is also here. And Penaria have a couple of riders here in Fortunato Baglioni, who's been very active, and he has got the lead in the King of the Mountains, and also Luis Laverde. So there's two riders here. Case d'Apon has one, Francisco Perez, and Lampre has one in Paolo Tiralongo, who's also a good climber.
Oh, there's a little move
Somebody's
going through the tunnel there.
I think.
I'm very surprised that it didn't split up a lot more on the Sempione. But as you can see, I'm just trying to look down there and see who's the man. Again, it's Parra trying to make the move there from Cofidis. Again, covered there by the man in the white jersey, Sandy Cassar, pulling it all back together. These riders are all now very much of a similar ability, and it's a question of who's got the chance to try and surprise someone with a late move.
Well, Cassar held the green jersey for 3 days during the transition from Belgium across to Italy, but he soon lost out on that when Basso took control. Now today, Basso's lost his lead in the King of the Mountains to Baglioni. And is that Baglioni who's gone? But is it Baglioni or is it Laverde? It's one or the other.
Well, it was one of the riders. It looked like the Euskaltel rider who was in that group.
Oh, well, in which case it's Ico Flores, the one man I said couldn't win. Oh, thank heavens for that.
Baglioni's just sitting at the back of the group there, just ahead of Parra. Parra's the man just to go into the back of the group. Now the move coming here from Case d'Apagna.
Well, this is going to be a move here, and this will be from Francisco Perez Sanchez, and well, he's advertised it well enough, but he's gone.
A strong attack there, very powerful indeed, and there's somebody coming across the gap, and I think that's Laverde going after him. And there you can see that this is always the difficult part at the end of a long breakaway like this. Everybody's just starting to feel a little bit more tired and wondering whether or not they're responsible for making the effort to pull it all back together.
Yeah, just who is there left to chase? You can see there's two Phonak riders here, Zampieri and Shop, and they don't look as though they've got the legs to do much about this.
Well, this is Laverde, yes, but he hasn't quite got onto the wheel there of Perez.
No.
He's really, so Perez has made a very strong move.
But these guys are waiting too long. That was Raffaele Iliano there, the Selle Italia rider in the light blue-white colours. He's trying to do something about it. He's done well in this competition in the Hotspot Sprint Series, just into Giro in the past.
Look at the gear that Laverde is using there. He's just trying to get onto the wheel of the man in front of him, Perez. And Perez, I think he's just done it now. He have a chance to get a little bit of a breather. We're inside of about 4.5 kilometres to go. So Luis Laverde has made the junction. Let's have a look back here. Well, it's not much of a gap.
It's a bit dangerous when you sling off your bottle, if you meant to sling it off like that, into the path of the riders behind. This is the Cofidis rider, just in the rear of the race.
That's Parra. He's
hanging on a bit now, but these two have got together, but they're not exactly pulling away, are they?
Well, no, Perez there on the front is doing the majority and the bulk of the move, and you can see the gap is not great. It's around about 45 metres. Theoretically, they should get pulled back into the fold, and it's Laverde who's not doing any work at all there. I think he must have made the big effort to get across the gap.
Nice crowd down in the basement in the town. Now it's going to get a little bit tougher as the riders head up towards the finish here, and two riders clear. Francisco Perez of Case d'Apon and Luis Laverde of Penaria. And Laverde just checking over his shoulder there while Perez does all of the work. Perez, the long lanky rider, there seems to be a lot of power, and there's nobody really closing that gap. If anything, that gap has opened slightly, and there's not a lot of people here behind willing to do the work. The Gerolsteiner rider down there is Stefan Schumacher, who can pack a sprint finish.
Well, it's up to him, Phil, to make the effort to try and pull it all back together, because if it is a large group together coming into the finishing straight, I reckon Stefan Schumacher, already a stage winner in the Giro, has got a chance to get himself the win. Laverde now has seen the gap and decided, I'm going to work with Perez and try and consolidate, and they are doing. It's now out to around about 100 metres.
Yes, Schumacher won stage 3 and was rewarded with the pink jersey. There's no way that can happen today, but he can win the stage if he nails back these leaders here.
Well, that was Iliano just trying to make the effort there, just coming off the front. Sandy Cassar also, but this, when you see how much time it takes to get across the gap, is a good gap for these two leaders. That's Perez on the front, Case d'Apagna, followed by Laverde. Laverde not hanging about now, deciding to come forward and help set the pacemaking.
Well, I really never thought this was going to work. It's almost a slow-motion breakaway. They've just put these boys on the limit, and I think they are pulling away in sight of the finish virtually here. That's a much bigger gap now.
Well, I'm not sure if these two riders do survive. Who I'm going to put my money on for the sprint, I would have to say I think the Case d'Apagna rider, who seems to be very strong indeed. I don't know a whole lot about Laverde, apart from the fact that, looking at his build here, he must be an exceptionally good climber.
Well, Perez is perhaps getting a little bit excited here. He's doing the lion's share of the work. Laverde, if you go on the form book, has never won a race since 2003 when he won the 4th stage of a race in Italy, the Settimana Lombardi. And he's sitting there behind and doesn't seem, he's either unwilling or unable to help here.
Well, Perez, in fact, the man on the front in the dark black jersey of Case d'Epargne, did have a win in the early part of the season. He won the Grand Prix Almeria in February, but that was an awful long time ago. They're now getting into the outskirts of time. There's a time gap, 8 seconds between the two leaders and the Inseguitori, the chasers. And now is the time when it starts to get just that little bit more tactical. Perez quite happy to keep the pressure on, knows that they need to keep working together. Laverde only going through when the Spanish rider forces him to go to the front and help share the pacemaking.
That's what he should be doing, getting the rider to come and work with him, because if he once you see the finish, riders change their mentality, and all of the energy they thought they didn't have, they find. 1.8 kilometers to go, just over a mile and a bit to the finishing line here now. The gap is only 8 seconds, and it's not over yet, because
it's less than 8 seconds.
I think it's probably 5 or 6
That's
now.
Iliano.
But Iliano's on his own. He's got nothing left. He's got to do something. That's Tirolongo just behind him. He's the Lamprey rider here.
That is not 8 seconds anymore. I would say that's down to 4 or 5 seconds. These riders, every time they go around a corner now, will be looking to see if they can see the red kite, hoping that they're coming in. There's a big crowd out to see this stage.
Looking at this, it's a good job it wasn't a bunch sprint as they come around this corner. The road seems to narrow out quite well. Looking down again from the top.
Baliani doing a good job there, coming to the front.
Good.
He's trying to back it all off. Look at his heart rate, 94%. He's trying to slow it down around these corners. He thinks his teammate can come up with the win. Well, even if they stay clear, the worst he can do is second place.
Well, they're lining up for the finish here. 1,300 metres to go. Look at that. They're round the back bend here now. These two can't afford to mess about as they look at each other and ride side by side. They're gambling now, very much so. Laverde and Perez. This is Schumacher right on the front now. And Baliani still trying to break up the chase, which is a good team tactic.
There's Steve Lampieri in there as well for Team Phonak. Now this is the moment when Laverde is starting to play a little tactical game. There is the ultimo kilometro, last kilometre, and is still holding on to about 5 or 6 seconds advantage.
Now every pedal brings them closer to the line as they look over the shoulder. They're gambling here big time. And it looks as though Perez has manoeuvred at the last minute. Laverde into first place, and he's gone. Perez has used that to jump. Now he's jumped at about 900 metres, maybe 800 to the line. He's gambling on an awful long sprint, and I think that's a mistake. He's going to pull these two away from the chasers.
Oh, he has done.
Yeah, but he's going to hand the race back now to Luis Felipe Laverde for sure.
Laverde was locked in there into the slipstream of the Spanish rider Francisco Perez. They've got the gap now. I don't think they're going to get caught because there's no reaction coming in that group behind, which is being paced by Sandy Cassar. 350 metres to go. Cassar on the front of the group. Steve Zampieri in second place. Now look how well positioned Laverde is here.
Well, I mean, Perez really gave this one away. He tried too soon out, and then there's no way Laverde was going to come off his wheel until the right moment. An easy win in the end, and a big win for Laverde, and a great day out for Panaria. They win the stage, and they get the leader in the King of the Mountains with Baliani, who's in the centre of this group. It was Tirolongo, Schumacher with the first two there. Yeah.
And bear in mind, Phil, that Team Panaria is a wild card selection, not a member of the Pro Tour. They came in as one of the last teams along with Giro d'Italia, and they've got something to take home as well.
Well, Giro d'Italia get in because they're part of the sponsorship of the Giro d'Italia, so it's really an invitation which can be always foreseen. But Panaria have to fight for their way in. Here's the sprint now. They get a stage win in Luis Laverde.
Good day out, and they really timed it to perfection. I really expected that Perez was the stronger rider of the two, but making that effort at 900 metres to go, he didn't have anything left to make a second effort. And the main field now in the outskirts of town. This looks like Charlie Wegelius working for the team and Danilo De Luca, but almost 6.5 minutes since the main field, since the breakaway came in.
Well, as I said earlier, there's no reason to worry about this because this field has had something of a day off today before the battle resumes again. They're going to be just over 7 minutes behind. And what's the betting that Paolo Bettini might try and stretch his legs and just nip a couple of points for that Ciclamino points leaders jersey. We've only seen one jersey change today. We're not going to see a change in the points. Jens Voigt again driving at the front of the field, as he always seems to do, always mindful of where the pink jersey is, his race leader, and keeping him safe.
Well, you're right about one thing. Paolo Bettini was right up there in the top 6 or 7. There is Danilo De Luca right on the wheel of the pink jersey of Ivan Basso. But I think we could well see there is Bettini up into about 3rd position there, and again Milram making the lead out. I'm really not sure why.
No, we've never worked that one out the whole tour since we lost Alessandro Battacchi. But here comes Bettini now. This will be the sprint coming up for 12th place. So there are points available. He makes it pretty easy. And I don't know who was placed there, but I think it's probably Sven Kraus, the Gerolsteiner rider.
Well, it's a Gerolsteiner at the front and a Gerolsteiner at the back here, but they did have Stefan Schumacher in the breakaway. And again, Laverde confirmed here as the winner ahead of Perez. Tirolongo very upset to get 3rd place, and Schumacher riding sensibly in the group and getting 4th, with Iliano and Baliani making up the top 6.
Official time gap 7 minutes and 44 seconds back to Basso's group. So time gains for a few riders today, but none of them looking long-term to the win of this tour. So it was a safe day of racing for Ivan Basso, and the big gaps remain. Look at that. 7.5 to Belli in 4th, 8 minutes to Simoni, who's a double winner of this race. Sandy Cassar, who was in the break, he gets up into 6th place now and is having a very good race. But they're all smiles.
Ivan Basso looking very happy now with the way this race is unfolding. He really now doesn't have to go out onto the attack anymore. From now till the finish, he can play a defensive game. And this is the change in the King of the Mountains classification. The popular Fortunato Baliani gets himself the lead by a single point, but that's enough.
Yes, and that is enough. He stays in green for tomorrow's stage, and he'll be happy enough with that. Great day out for Panaria. And one of his best tours for sure.
The other guys who were in the breakaway with him are going to rejoin him.
They're just behind him. In fact, Sandy Cassar is in the breakaway. Paolo Tirolongo, Zampieri, Steph Schumacher. There's the full list for you. Sandy Cassar, in fact, was the erstwhile leader in the King of the Mountains competition. But in all honesty, up until today, and it might be changing now because of those points by...
points.
8 days to go, a fly past, and they are not Italian aircraft, because I think they're from Switzerland, because that's where we're going today now as they blow out the Italian flag colours, because this race making an incursion now into Switzerland, and they do it by climbing over the San Bernardo Pass. But this race now down to just under 170 riders left in.
2 big mountain passes on the route this afternoon. The riders moving away from Aosta this morning, heading up to the summit of the San Bernard, descending into Switzerland, going through the town of Sion, but then it's all the very nasty climb at the end, the Passo Sempione, before descending down back into Italy for the finish in Domodossola.
And not surprisingly, it's been a day of getting the group away that doesn't really matter. Fortunato Baliani, who's having his best tour of Italy I can remember. He's a very good climber.
Check out his heart rate though. Look at that. He's working now at 97%, tickling the maximum heart rate that he can possibly come in with. This man, I remember a couple of years ago, was the winner of the King of the Mountains classification in the Tour de Langkawi in Malaysia, and he's a man who over the years has been very aggressive in the Giro d'Italia. Sits up, looks over his shoulder, waiting to see if